And this video is for FM 341 and it will cover working with text in Adobe Illustrator. On Blackboard in Learning Module 5 for weeks 7 and 8, I've added a few items which will help you in terms of working with text in Adobe Illustrator. There is a manual that you can take a look at that will cover a lot of the information that I'll present in this video, and it's a great reference tool that you can take a look at. There's also a hoodie file that you can open, and then there is a ticket and labeling guide which I will ask you to work with and submit for homework, as well as resubmit with assignment 3. So in the hoodie file, what I've done is I've given you a pre-drawn sketch of a hoodie that will work within a minute. You can select that and just pull it off to the side. And then you can go ahead and open up under Window, under Type, there is a character. There's a lot of different windows under the Type tool. But you can go right to character, and that will open up a lot of what we'll work with in terms of for text. So text is pretty straightforward in terms of just like you've worked with text in another program. If you go to the T tool on your keypad or left click on the Type tool on the main work toolbar, and you'll notice that there is a corner with a white arrows, so you can actually left click and hold and see the additional tools that are hidden underneath here. If you drag your mouse all the way over to the right hand edge, as we've done before, it will tear off the mini toolbox, and you can take a look at that and work with that as well. So the first Type tool is the straight Type tool, and you'll notice that when you left click on that, your cursor will change from the selection tool or whatever you might have been on to this Type tool, and if you left click once, it will start to put in some type. If you type something, you'll see that the type is there. If you double click on it, that will highlight the type. If you do a right click, it will take you to a shortcut where you have access to other fonts, and you also can change the size. So you can work either with the right click, or you can always go to the character window that we opened up, and next to the top line which shows the font, you can left click on the pull down menu and change the font that way as well. You also have the ability to change the font size from the predetermined numbers. You can also left click twice in that box and type in a number that you want, and it will automatically change the font. There's some other tools in terms of spacing that you can fool around with. I don't use these too much. These are primarily used for people that are setting graphics. But in terms of spacing between lines as well as between letters, you can sort of fool around with some of these and see how it affects your Type tool. You'll notice that on the main toolbox, when you work with the Type tool, and when you select it, I have a black default fill. That's typically how the Type tool will work. If you look on the main toolbox, you'll notice I have a fill color and I do not have a stroke color, and that is typically the way Type will work. You can certainly change that if you open up Window and go to Swatches. You can change the color by changing with the type selected. You can change it to any color that's there in the swatch palette, and you can also double click on the color picker and pick yourself a new color that way as well. The new color will be on top. You can invert it if you wanted to, and you could have just a color on the outline. You could also add a color on the inside. So there's a lot that you can do with Type in terms of working with color as well as the different fonts. And think about in terms of how a lot of fashion companies are developing graphic t-shirts or some cool logos, And this can be a quick way that you can actually create something for your project in working with type. You have the ability also with the selection tool that you can change the size and you can modify the text depending on how you select it and change it. If you're looking to make it smaller or larger, you can also hold down the Shift key, left click on a corner, and you can increase or decrease the font that way as well. Okay, so that's the straight type tool. There is another type tool which is the area type tool. That's the second one, and this allows you to fill type or font or words into a specific space. So if you go to the rectangle tool and left click and drag and make yourself a box, and then go to the area type tool, and if you click on, say, the left-hand edge of the box, you'll notice that the type will fill within that space. Now, I had it preset at 96. I can change that font down to a smaller size. I can also, on this character window, let's see here, under window, if you go to type and come down to paragraph, you can also change the layout so that it's left center, left side orientation, center alignment, or right side alignment. So say you were looking to develop something and it was for the gap and you were looking to do a hang tag, men's spring, summer 22 hoodie. And you wanted to create this to go on your sketch. The one thing you'll notice is once you use the box to fill the garment, the text in, the box itself actually will disappear, so you will have to go back and recreate the box or a box to go around it. And because I drew this after, do a right-click arrange and send it to the back so that the font is on top of the box. And if I group both of these and then reduce them in size, say I wanted to create this as a hang tag that would go onto a sample garment that I was going to be presenting, that would be one way that you could actually work with this area type tool. So you can do this with both the square as well as the ellipse. And I'll recreate font, and make this with a yellow fill, and I could send it to the back. So, this is one way that you can affect and work with the font depending on how it is that you want to position it. Okay. The next tool I use often is the type on a path tool, and this will follow a line. So in this case, if I go to the pen tool and I make myself a double curved line, and I go to the type on a path tool, the type will actually follow the curve here. So again, I could do it as gap, summer 22, and say I wanted to change the color so that it was a blue. And I can change the size of that to however I want it. Get rid of my hello. Clean this up as well. Here we go. And say I wanted to do another circle, and I'm just going to fill that with a color. And I'm sort of just, creating something here. I'll get rid of the black outline. And all I've done here to get rid of the black outline, which I originally had, is if I select the circle, bring the black frame to the front, and then left click on the none, which is this red diagonal, it will remove the black outline, so I just have the solid fill color. Okay, so this is a way that you can start to think about in terms of how you can possibly start to work with text to create sort of an interesting item as part of your assignment for your project. Another tool is this vertical type tool. So in this case, rather than it going horizontal, the type will be vertical. So again, you make a line with the pen tool, select that, then go to the vertical type tool, and say I do the gap. So you can see here that the letters are vertical, and I can change that to blue, and then I can move this so that it then follows the sleeve. Okay, so there's a few different ways in which you can actually work with type to think about in terms of for your semester project. Then I've also given you a file to create a ticket and labeling guide, and this is a live file that I've worked with and given you. So when you download that, that's what this will look like. And the way that I've set this up follows what is in the manual, which is on page 78. And you can see here that I've set this up with a variety of different layers rather, so that I tried to make this a working file for yourself, and you can modify any of this to change it. So this gap logo, I actually just went to Google Images and saved that to my desktop, and then just placed it into the file here on the label file. And then in terms of the garment that I have here, you want to include one of your sketches to show the placement of where these labels will go. So in this case, I have this shirt, but I could pull this over and I could, let's get rid of this gap here. I can select this hoodie. I'm just going to copy it and then just paste it into this. But you could also do a place, file place. So when you set this up, then you bring in your file and you can then change the position of any of these items. So here's my label. So say I was going to move that lower. I included arrows here. And I usually will include arrows on any kind of layout for the factory so they understand in terms of the placement. So with the direct selection tool, you can move all this. This price ticket here, the way that I created this, let's see if I can pull this over here. There we go. Okay. And if I ungroup this, there we go. Okay, so this barcode is just working with the stroke window. And you can see here that I dashed the line and changed the increments from the dash and the gap. And then on the weight of the line, I increased it, which you can also decrease it depending. So this is sort of the Higden cheat method to create a barcode that would go on a ticket. And then of course this text you can actually change depending on whatever the price would be. So for your project you would change the logo depending on what store it is that you're working on, and you can ungroup that. and then just take your logo off. Take my logo off and put yours on. Okay. So this is hopefully a working file that you can work with. On this fourth layer here, I included a tricks layer so you can actually see how I created the barcode. So you don't need to resubmit that to me on this. You can actually just turn that off and modify the barcode and the price ticket. Group this, and I should be able to move this over again. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so those are some of the shortcut tools in terms of how I work with text and how you might think about it for your semester project. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at mark_higdon@FITNYC. Thanks so much.